and gentlemen. How's it going?
Doing good.
All right.
So today we're going to be looking at Soul Survivors.
Oh, nice.
This is another game, which I don't know what you would call the genre, but Vampire Survivors.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it
can
looks like
see
it,
it
yeah.
exactly right now.
So this is in early access. So right now there's only 2 levels and 2 playable characters. However, as you saw on the character select screen, there are going to have additional characters. The reason that the video we're looking at specifically for this character is because it is a lot more unique. The first character is very, very traditional. If you've played Vampire Survivor, it's like your basic character. This one is a necromancer that's a pet class, and the weapon is based on momentum.
Yeah, I can see the ball kind of like following you around and stuff. Okay.
Literally, I'm swinging it based on my momentum. Now, with the gold, there are upgrades that you can purchase that are permanent. One of them that I got is that if I pick up a pile of like the body mass there, which would resurrect a skeleton if I didn't have one up, but if there's a skeleton up, it heals me.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool.
And there are still things like your timed abilities, which you can see the timer down on the bottom where the it looks like icons, but really it's just a cooldown timer. I primarily stick to AoE, but then there is also, like I said, this ability to control when you swing your mace, because it is actually like a active weapon that you're swinging around. The other character doesn't have that. The other character's regular attack is on a timer, just like you would expect. So, what do you guys see here that differentiates itself or doesn't from Vampire Survivors? Because that's the inevitable comparison.
I mean, it looks basically the exact. It looks almost like a reskin, right? It's so similar. Obviously, the momentum thing's a bit different, but there were plenty of weapons that worked in different ways in Vampire Survivor 2, so I could see it just being kind of like that. It's much bigger, I guess.
The avatars, you mean?
Yeah. The creatures and all that are much bigger than in Vampire Survivor for sure.
I mean, I think, yeah, aesthetically, it's definitely what Alex is mentioning. It looks so similar to, Vampire Survivor. I think the biggest difference is just, playing a necromancer as opposed to, I guess, maybe in the other one it was more of like a wizard. So maybe time period difference. But, I like the uniqueness, actually, of that mace weapon that you mentioned. Because, again, it's definitely different than anything we've seen in any of the Vampire Survivor lookalikes. Definitely never seen that yet.
The next thing I'm going to say is going to be purely speculation, but it makes me wonder if once the other classes are unlocked, if they will have a few more things that they think outside of the box of, because that mace, that's every run. Like, it's not a random pickup, like you always have that. One of the things that you can purchase on the level up is improving the weapon damage of it, much like things like your AoE abilities, your increased experience gain. You can get upgrades to get up to 5 skeletons walking around with you. And the nice thing is, they'll actually pick up experience orbs as well.
Oh, okay.
So if they kill an enemy, you don't have to trek to where they are fighting them, as long as they walk in the direction of it. They don't kind of like magnetize to it.
Yeah.
But if they walk over it, it does pick up.
One kind of interesting thing I'm noticing as well is like the abilities you're getting are specific to the class, where that's a little different than, let's say, classic Vampire Survivor, where like you can get the garlic on any class, right?
Yeah. The Vampire Survivor, most classes work in a way that they have a specific weapon for them, but then they can pick up any other weapon they want. So, like, the second class would be able to get that Morning Star, for example, even though they'd start with a different weapon and whatever.
Yeah, no, the only commonalities that I've seen between them is that both of them can get your basic passives like increased experience gain, or just your bog standard increase percentage of X type of damage.
Yeah.
But the other character has an entirely unique set of abilities as well.
I kind of like that because it adds, again, more flavor to the class. Like, there's some class identity almost, where with Vampire Survivor, there really almost wasn't. Other than, again, what weapon you start with is the only thing that really mattered.
Yeah.
Anyone could get enemy weapons.
It definitely makes it different. It combines a bit of a Diablo 3 almost style thing to it, where, you're just going around killing whole bunches of enemies, but you're doing it in slightly different ways depending on your class.
Now, you'll have to excuse me if I'm not super familiar with the comparison to Vampire Survivor, but for this one, each of the levels that are available that I've played has multiple boss phases that happen at certain times.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty similar. I mean, it was on a timer with Vampire Survivor as well, and it was, I wouldn't say set in stone, but it was like you'd fight a certain kind of enemy, and then there would be a boss of that type of enemy, usually. So that's not that dissimilar, but it really depends on how unique they were. Because, when we're in the library in Vampire Survivor, you fight a mummy, and it just didn't quite necessarily match the aesthetic.
No.
Where this one seems a lot more wanting to stick with, okay, what makes sense in kind of like this graveyard bog area,
Yeah, so the bosses that you fight in this level, there's 3 of them, are not just bigger versions of the regular enemies.
Yeah.
You will see one boss in this video that's kind of like a flesh golem type thing. Then there's like a warden surrounded by guards that doesn't show up, and then a giant treant.
Nice. Okay.
After you beat all 3, the game keeps going, and what happens is the enemies keep coming at you, but then you start getting a series of curses on you.
Oh,
and
that's a different
the
way
furthest
of
I
doing it,
ever made it was to 3 curses past the final, or the 3rd boss.
Mhm.
And that curse was one that made my regular attack heal enemies, and only my abilities would do damage, and that was just too much to overcome.
Fair.
But it did still, almost feel like at that point, like there wasn't a conclusion to the level, right? It would have just kept going. Or maybe there's a set number of curses that now it's considered you win, but
Yeah.
I'm not 100%.
I mean, I guess if you want to compare that to Vampire Survivor, it was like you would get to the end of the timer. Once the timer's done, death comes out and just murders you. Now, technically, there are some ways to kill death, but as soon as you kill death, another one will come out, and so it's almost like a hard limiter at that point.
I don't know if you noticed, but there were a few passive temporary abilities you got.
Yeah,
in
your
this
mace
as well.
got really big there for a bit.
Yeah, and there was one point where I had like a flamethrower that was coming out of my character.
Okay.
There's bombs, there's daggers, and when you pick these orbs up off the ground, it's literally just like, hey, you get this ability for 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And those are not character specific, but they're also just temporary power-ups, as we would know them, rather than like level-ups.
Yeah, there was a couple in Vampire Survivor because there was also a torch, almost a flamethrower type thing. But it usually wasn't something that edited your weapon. It was just like a flamethrower, that was temporary.
Yeah. Again, pretty much everything I'm seeing so far, it does seem very similar. It's just sort of the graphical idea and the direction they've gone that way that seems a little bit different.
And it's $1 cheaper Canadian than Vampire Survivor.
I mean, already a cheap game. Already a very cheap game, so yeah. Looks pretty good.
Alright, so I think we've kind of touched on everything we can, because this genre, outside of giving it your own unique abilities, is kind of set. So I present to you guys the question that always comes up. Do you continue after the first opinion?
I think the better question is, would I be able to stop playing after it? If it's anything like Vampire Survivors, it kind of looks just the same. Like, it'll be a game where suddenly I'm, 50 hours into it and I don't know where the time went. So I think I probably would.
I'm 100%. I would play this, yes. The fact that it has, again, a bit of a unique spin on the Vampire Survivor, kind of formula gives me a lot more, playtime with it. So, yeah, I would definitely continue.
So I've put quite a few hours into this, more than was required to make this video happen, and quite a few of those hours took place much later into the night than I had anticipated. So for me, it is absolutely... I actually forgot to mention, you can get 3 rerolls per level of the options you have for leveling up to try and get a different option if, say, you want to get a certain build or a certain ability earlier in the game. That being said, anyway, yes, I spent 3, 4, 5 nights this week alone up until like 2 a.m. playing this game. So it is, without a shadow of a doubt, a continue after the first opinion for me. So that's 3 continues, and at the price of $5 Canadian, I can't imagine anyone who's a fan of this type of game wouldn't be or shouldn't be interested in giving it a try.
Hey, did you like that video? If you did, be sure to let us know by clicking the like button and leaving a comment. If you want to be first in line for any new content, be sure to subscribe to our channel and then hit up our Facebook page. The link's in the description below to see what's coming up next.